Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thanks for being here. Today's video is going to be on the Fire Knight's Castle. I'm going to be providing you with a guide for the normal difficulty level of Fire Knight's Castle. Now you can see right here, we have a Super Raid event going on that is in conjunction with a Fusion event. So there is a Fire Knight tournament today, and I'm doing Fire Knight anyway. Maybe some of you are. So I thought it'd be a good chance to review what the Fire Knight Castle fight is all about, and what kind of compositions you might want to take in there. So we're going to cover all the basics that you need to know for the waves, for the boss fight. And we're also going to talk about specific compositions and champions you might want to consider for going into the Fire Knight's Castle. For today, I'm going to be running stage 20 of the dungeon. Now, one of the things you'll notice about these dungeon stages is that each stage changes affinity. So that may affect your team composition. You do want to take that into account, especially if you're struggling to get past a particular stage and you're trying to make progress in the dungeon. But I'm just going to go in here to stage 20. Okay, so here is my team for stage 20. Now, the first thing you may notice is that I have 3 Magic Affinity champions going up against a Force Affinity boss. I just mentioned that you don't necessarily want to do that, but I wanted to put together as free to play friendly a composition as I could. You'll see I have 3 rares here. I only have 2 epics. I have no void epics, no legendaries. So I feel like this is a very accessible team. Obviously, I do have a Coldheart here. Coldheart is amazing against the Fire Knight. She's amazing in a couple of other dungeons as well. But I did want to showcase her. I could have rebuilt this team without Coldheart, but it would have taken significant revamping. So Coldheart really is a key to this team composition. I also have an Allure here who is going to really help me with the turn meter control. But from a standpoint of free-to-play friendly ease of putting this composition together, I feel like most players should be able to, if not copy this composition exactly, they can imitate this composition with some various champions. I think the 2 most important champions here are going to be Allure and Coldheart. Those are going to be the hardest to replace. But for instance, if you've been playing for a while and you have a Vizix can be a very good substitute for Allure. You could also bring in some other turn meter control champions. Armiger is a very cheap option that would help there, although he probably couldn't get the job done on his own. So you might want to think about that as you're building your composition. But again, this is stage 20, so anybody who's taking on stage 20 is going to be into the game for several months, and hopefully you've started to accumulate some good champions to choose from. Even if you're not getting legendaries, if you're getting some good epics and some good rares, you should have an opportunity to farm stage 20 of the Fire Knight's Castle relatively easily. I'm not 100% sure that this would be a full auto 100% clear. I think probably it would fail maybe 20-25% of the time, but I'm actually going to manual this just to show you some of the considerations that we have during the wave stages and also during the boss fight. So let's actually jump into a fight now. So 3 out of the 4 gear dropping dungeons. So when we're talking about the Dragon, the Fire Knight, and the Ice Golem, all 3 of those dungeons have waves. You have to clear 2 waves before you get to the boss. Now, you have to build your team composition with both fights in mind. Can you get through the waves, and can you get through the boss? So if you can only do one or the other, that's not going to be enough. So when you're building your team composition, you want to think about, how do I clear waves, and how do I win the boss fight? Right now, let's talk about the waves here. So there are 3 main ways in all wave-based content that you can approach waves, basically, and from a team composition standpoint. The first and most straightforward is you can nuke waves out before they even get a chance to go. You need a very good wave clear champion to do that. So you need like a seer with a good setup, maybe in a reset champion like a Kymar. You could potentially use like a poison exploder. There are a few champions like that can clear waves very quickly. Maybe even some bomb champions like Nishak Verminlord, you can clear waves. And again, you may need a reset champion in order to do that on the second wave. So there are some champions out there that can do that. It's the most straightforward way. It's the fastest way, but it's often the toughest way. It's like the hardest composition to build because you need very specific champions who are excellent at wave clearing, and then you need the gear in order to do that. This composition is not built to do that. We are not going to be nuking out waves at all. We're not working on that really with any consideration. We are just moving past that idea. Okay, we don't have the champions or the gear to do that. So Now we have two other ways. The second way is a crowd control method. This is actually probably the most forgiving and the most flexible method. So if you can bring in champions that have AoE stuns, AoE freezes, AoE provokes even, those work really well. Slows will be very helpful in addition when you're trying to use crowd control, because that means the enemy champions will build their turn meter more slowly. And then finally, also turn meter control you can use in order to prevent the enemy from getting turns. So we have a little bit of that going on here. We don't actually have any hard CC, but we do have 3 champions that have some turn meter control. So Allure and Deacon Armstrong and Coldheart will all drop the enemy turn meter in some way. So we do have a little bit of that going on. And you may want to mix in some of these 3 different strategies. So for instance, I could bring in 1 CC champion here, like a hard CC, and then some turn meter control and overlap those. I could also bring in like a drop defense and a weaken and try to nuke a little bit harder. I don't have any of those debuffs really here. I do have an AoE drop defense, so that's going to help with the damage. But so, you know, again, you can mix and match these different styles of clearing wave content based on the roster that you have. Finally, the third method is going to be to outlast the enemy. And so that would be the tanky method. In that case, you're going to want shields, maybe block damage buffs. You're going to want increase defense. You're going to want strength, and you're going to want heals. Maybe you want a reviver. I don't have much of that in this particular composition, and I was worried about survivability. So you'll notice that I actually have a shield up. I put my Allure in a shield set to give my team a little bit more survivability. And then I do have Apothecary to give spot heals. That is very minimal sustain. Nobody is in a lifesteal set. I don't have any other healers. So I'm using just a touch of sustain, like the sustain tactic. I'm using a touch of the nuke tactic with the drop defense and some damage. And then actually what I'm going to primarily rely on is some crowd control. So this is a little bit of everything. This is a little bit of a mix of the 3 normal like tactics you would use in wave content. And I'm hoping it's going to be enough right now. I have run 1 practice run with this group. It was successful. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure this would be a full auto team and it would clear 100% of the time. One of my fears about that is because of the weak affinities. But okay, so I'm going to go ahead and manual this, and I'm going to just talk my way through it a little bit so you know what's going on. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my turn meter going with Deacon Armstrong, and then I'm going to drop defense on everybody. That's going to make them take more damage. Now with Allure, I have 2 options. If I were to put her into the AI, I might just want her to use this A1 over and over again, which decreases the turn meter by 25% on each critical hit, and it's a 3-hitter. So she's going to spread this around and decrease some turn meter. I also have an AoE that can drop defense, but it's the small drop defense, only 30%, but it does place a sleep. For right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to the turn meter control. We get some turn meter out there. Now remember, she can weak hit because these are all force affinity, but luckily we got some turn meter out there. Now, my starter champion here, Athel, is just in here for nukage, so we're going to go ahead and drop that down. She'll play a different role against the Fire Knight, but in wave content, we're just using her as a nuke. We're going to get the speed going with Apothecary, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to use Heartseeker here, which decreases turn meter on 1 champion, and we're just going to go ahead and pick the champion with the largest turn meter and drop that. Okay, and now here's something about my Deacon Armstrong. He has the mastery that can also, on the very first hit on a champion, decrease turn meter. So that's a nice little mastery that you can use in Fire Knight to get a little bit more turn meter control. So you can see a little bit of turn meter decrease there. And then we're back to the Allure, who's going to continue to drop turn meter. I want to get around to my nuke a little bit faster, so I'm going to use her extra turn mechanic, Athel's extra turn mechanic. And then I'm going to try to pick at least the, somebody who's pretty weak and try to nuke them out as soon as I can. So let's go ahead and hit that guy. Apothecary just hits, and now we're back around to Deacon's cycle, so we're going to keep doing that. A little bit of AoE damage. A little bit of AoE damage from Coldheart. Now I think I'm going to use the AoE from Allure. We're going to get some sleeps out there. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to wake some people up with Apothecary. I don't want to do that right now with his A3, so I'm just going to heal somebody, even though it's a wasted heal. And now we're going to get Athel out there on some single target damage. We're going to keep doing that. Allure does have a single target attack here on her A3, so you can use that to not wake people up if you need to. All right, now we're definitely going to be waking people up with Flurry of Arrows. And we took some hits. All right, we're just going to keep running through. Now that you know basically the idea, we're just going to be repeating that over and over again. One of the things that you want to remember is as you get towards the end of a wave and you don't have to worry so much about getting hit, you're going to want to start to A1 cycle your champions. And so I'm going to start doing that now, where basically I don't want to have my skills on cooldown when I start round 2. I need them available so that I can open that fight the right way. I'm just going to A1 the rest of the way here. Okay, wave 2 is more of the same, so we'll speed this up a little bit so you don't, have to wait as long. And we're just going to rip through this wave. Okay, so that might be a failure here. I'm going to keep trying anyway because I'm a free-to-play player and this energy matters to me. So let's see if we can pull it off with 4. Okay, so we've gotten to the boss. We've given ourselves a big challenge in that we only have 4 of our 5 champions. But I think we might still have enough to do this. Now, what you need to know about this fight is there are a few mechanics that are really important to understand. And again, you have a few different options about how you're going to build your team composition. Each of the team composition strategies that you take into the wave content has a different strategy here on the boss. So the primary strategy is you need to break through this shield. All of the compositions will need to break through this shield. For each hit, this counter will be lowered. And then once the shield is down, you can affect the boss with debuffs. Prior to that, you can't affect the boss with debuffs. And he also takes 80% reduced damage. This counter gets higher the higher the stage. So at lower stages, this won't be 10, but it might start at, I think it starts at like 4 or 3 or 5, something like that. And then it'll just increase as you increase the difficulty. The other thing that will happen is that if he pulls off this skill, if the boss pulls off Dazzling Flames, he will decrease the speed of all of your champions. And that makes it a lot harder for you to then break his shield because you're getting fewer attacks in for each round that the boss goes. So again, you do have sort of 3 strategies here. If you're coming in with a team that is going to nuke this boss out, you need to break the shield fast. You need to get a slow on him or some decreased turn meter. And then you need to burn him down before he goes, preferably once or twice, because you're going to be pretty squishy. That is very similar to the strategy I'm going to be using here with a turn meter control team. It's less important that I hit hard, but it is more important that I keep the turn meter from climbing. So I want this boss to get no turns. I have an opportunity to do that even with just my 4 champions, and that's what I'm going to try to do. If you are coming in here with a very tanky team and you're looking for sustain and you have revives and heals and stuff like that, you still need enough attacks. You need, A1s with 2 or 3 attacks. You need somebody who has a big multi-hitter in order to break the shield, but then you can do a little bit of damage at a time, and then he's going to hit you. You're going to cleanse the slow that he puts on you. You're going to heal back up. You're going to break his shield again, and you'll rinse and repeat. There is another consideration if you go that route, which is that the boss does heal and he does destroy your max HP. So each time he attacks you with Searing Storm, he destroys some of your max HP. Fyro also heals at the start of every turn. So if he gets a lot of turns, he's going to be healing up. So you might want to bring in a heal reduction debuff because even when he puts up his shield, he doesn't cleanse the debuffs that are already on him. And again, Cold Heart is really good for that because not only does she bring her Heartseeker, but she also brings a heal reduction. I forget if it's on her A1 or A2. So again, Cold Heart is a great champion here. Okay, so we're going with the turn meter based strategy. And so let's see if we can do this. Now, one of the things that you need to know is that, again, we can't land any debuffs on the Fire Knight while his shield is up, so we may want to consider when we actually use our debuffing skills. So Deacon Armstrong has a 2-hitter on his first ability, his A1, so I'm just going to use that for now. Allure has 3 hits. Apothecary has 3 hits. Coldheart has 4 hits. So now we've got the shield broken, and now I can use my turn meter. Now the turn meter effect that decreases the turn meter of enemies will actually apply as long as I don't weak hit. Let's see if we can actually reduce some turn meter here. We did. Now we're going to get the drop defense if we can. That landed. Now we're going to get some turn meter reduction from Allure. That landed. Now we're going to get the speed buff going, and we should be just fine. So yeah, let's see. The heal reduction is on the A1 here. You could actually turn off the A2. If I get a poison on him, which I did, remember poison only ticks when the boss actually takes a turn, and we want him to take no turns. So yeah, so we're not going to let the poisons matter in this fight. But if you're using a very tanky team, you could use something like poisons if he's going to get multiple turns. I haven't used my Heartseeker yet because I want it to be available for reducing a bunch of turn meter if Allure misses. Because remember that Coldheart is not weak affinity, so she won't weak hit. So I'm just holding her Heartseeker in reserve. You don't have to do that, but I'm a little bit cautious right now because we only have 4 champions. All right, we're going to just speed this fight up, and you can watch how we go. There we go. If you were watching the fight, you could see there was a moment in there where I used Coldheart's Heartseeker, and she has enough accuracy here, but unfortunately, I think she got 3% resisted. So remember, 3% of any effect against the enemy can be resisted. That's got nothing to do with the resist level. That's just a built-in mechanic to the game. So sometimes you're going to miss that big Heartseeker, you're going to miss that big debuff, and it's going to throw you off. Luckily, we were able to keep it together and pull it off with only 4 champions. Now, obviously, the time here is almost 20 minutes. It took me a while to get this all filmed, and I was manualing the whole thing. But I think even on a manual, if I wasn't doing a video, I could probably clear this in about 5 or 6 minutes. And if this was a full auto team, it would probably clear in somewhere around 3 or 4 minutes. So yeah, very effective. We got all the way through. I wish Athel hadn't died, but as you can see, if you build your team in the proper way, you're still going to have an opportunity there as long as you don't lose a super important champion. I didn't lose Allure. I didn't lose Coldheart. And so Athel is actually, she was here for wave clear, right? She was primarily here for wave clear. She does have a 3-hitter on her A1 and a weaken, which is nice, but she wasn't critical to the boss fight. So we pushed on it and we were able to clear it. So now I'm just going to show you these champions, the builds I've got on these champions, so you can see what's kind of important and maybe what's not so important. And also so you can see the gear that I've used just to convince you that you don't have to have amazing gear to clear stage 20 of Fire Knight or any of the dungeons. You just need to have the right build. Okay, so the distribution of stats and ideas and like the synergies with your skills is way more important than having amazing gear. So let's go take a look at that now. Okay, so the first champion we're going to take a look at is Deacon Armstrong here. And you can see he is actually built very well. He is one of my best built champions on my entire account. His speed is 283. His accuracy is 500. Those are the 2 stats that really matter for him. But he also has a lot of defense. He's very tanky at over 4K defense. So of all the champions on the team, this is the one that is built with the best gear overall. You can see a lot of legendary gear, a lot of 6-star gear. So yeah, you do need, you know, key champions on your roster need to be built as well as possible. He is a key champion for me. I use him everywhere, and so he is built as well as I can possibly build him. As far as masteries are concerned, the one mastery that really stands out here is Evil Eye. Evil Eye decreases the target's turn meter when this champion hits them with the default skill for the first time. Decreases the turn meter by 20% with single target skills or 5% with the AoEs, occurs once per target. So I have this on my Deacon Armstrong. It just gives me a little bit more turn meter control on that first A1 that he uses. And so that's really nice. But as you can see, I don't have him completely masteried out. I do have the extra accuracy from Eagle Eye. And there are different ways you can build Deacon Armstrong, but this is the way I've gone. And then obviously he also has Chainbreaker, which didn't really come into play here, so you don't have to worry about the blessing so much. But, you know, he's fully booked out and he is level 60 and he does have an accuracy banner with speed on it. So he's built very well. And that's the, you know, the first champion that we had in our kind of team sheet here. He was our lead, so very strong champion for me. Now, the next one is Allure. You can actually see here, this is not how I would typically recommend you build Allure. I actually put some shield. I put a shield set on her because I was worried about survivability. And this is something that I actually did a few weeks ago because I was having trouble with Fire Knight stage 25 being 100% full auto. She was dying every once in a while, or somebody was dying, and so I decided to put her in a shield set. And that just increased my auto chances up to like 99% instead of, it was like, you know, 75, 80, 90%, something like that. So if you're worried about survivability and you don't have a lot of good supports, you can always put somebody in a shield set. I would recommend somebody with a high HP pool. But, you know, she was the one who I chose because I was still able to get the accuracy I needed. If you're worried about accuracy, here's the rule of thumb. You need roughly 12 points of accuracy for every stage of the boss. So at stage 20, you need about 240, you know, to be safe, maybe 250, 260. So I've clearly overshot here, but you don't need as much as I've got. Again, I'm, you know, 2+ years into the game, so I've got pretty good gear at this point, and I use these champions in places like Doom Tower, where, you know, in the hard mode of Doom Tower, you need higher accuracy than you do here for Fire Knight. I'm only just realizing right now that it says attacks 3 times at random, decreases the target's turn meter by 25% on each critical hit. So when I rebuilt her, I lost some critical rate, and I'm actually only at 69% on crit rate. So that was a mistake on my part. So if you're looking at that, you actually do want her at 100% crit rate. So I probably had her at 100% crit rate, and then I put her in the shield set, and I lost that 100% crit rate. So that's maybe, you know, even a reason why I was failing occasionally, was because she needs that crit rate in order to decrease turn meter. And so if she doesn't crit, she doesn't decrease turn meter. So don't make that mistake. Now let's look at Apothecary. You can see he's not in great gear at all. A lot of 5-star gear. In fact, all 5-star pieces. You know, we've got an Immortal set. We've even got an old school life set on here. We do have a speed set. His speed is okay at 187, but that's not astonishingly fast. That's actually on the slow side for an Apothecary. Don't need accuracy on him, so all you really care about is speed and then defensive stats, but under 3k defense. He has a decent HP pool here at what looks like 57k about. So that's pretty solid. 56k, I guess. But yeah, you know, just get him fast. If you can get him faster than this, if you can get him over 200, I would. But again, doesn't have to be perfect gear. He's still doing the job. Now let's look at the Athel. The Athel is in decent gear. A lot of 5-star pieces, only 2 6-star pieces here, and then 6-star accessories. 204 speed, so just fast enough. Decent crit damage, more crit rate than she really needs, but decent crit damage at about 165. That's not a lot of crit damage for a wave clearer. I would rather have like 100 more than that, maybe 250, 280 on a wave clearer. But she's not really a wave clearer. I just brought her in here because she was a rare and I wanted to use a starter champion. And she did die, which was unfortunate. But again, you know, enough speed, obviously 100% crit rate, some decent crit damage. She has accuracy to land her weaken because I use her in a one-shot Bommel team and I need that weaken. So I didn't rebuild her either. She's actually not built for Fire Knight at all. If I were building her specifically for Fire Knight, one, I would probably put her in a lifesteal set. I would want some accuracy, but I could drop this to about 2, you know, maybe 300 accuracy if I wanted to take her up to stage 25. And I would put a lot more crit damage on her. And finally, we come to Coldheart. Coldheart is built well enough. She's not badly built, but she's not built super well either. You can see she's actually on the slow side at 185. I would like her to be up over 200, preferably somewhere around 210. That'd be really nice for Fire Knight. But she does have a decent amount of crit damage. We're actually looking here at almost like 244. Is that what that is? A lot of accuracy. Again, we need the accuracy. I use her in other places, so more accuracy than I need. And then, I don't really pump her attack. You can see here on the chest piece, I've got her in a defense percentage chest piece because you just want her to be able to land her Heartseeker. Her Heartseeker does damage even if you don't have a ton of attack on her. You do want crit damage. So if you can get crit damage gloves and still get to your 100% crit rate, that's great. Remember, in fact, you don't need a 100% crit rate because her Heartseeker has an extra 30% chance of inflicting a critical hit. You could actually get away with 70% here on the crit rate. Okay, but again, accuracy, maybe some speed, get that crit rate to where it needs to be, and then everything else goes in crit damage. And any leftover stats are defensive, not offensive. You don't need attack on her to have her be effective. You need accuracy and crit damage. Okay, so that is it. That's what you need to know about the Fire Knight. Again, figure out what team composition is going to work for both the waves of the dungeon and the boss fight of the dungeon. Think about multi-hitters, anybody who's got multi-hits on their A1, 2 hits, 3 hits, 4 hits, like a Coldheart, that's always excellent. So you can break that shield fast. And then usually the best method is to turn meter control the boss so he never gets a shot. But if you want to go the tanky method, you can certainly try that as well. Before we go, I just wanted to show you my actual team composition that I typically run on stage 20 or stage 25. And again, you can see even this team composition has a lot of free-to-play friendly champions. Again, Allure is the primary component of this team composition for turn meter control. We add Vizix in there for some extra turn meter control. Royal Guard is a great champion. He wasn't specifically built for this, but he works really well. He has a 4-hitter on his A2. I think he's got a AoE slow. He's also a very hard-hitting max HP damage dealer. Still the Drakes, just to keep us going. We've got the stuns for the AoEs. We've got heals. We've got a revive in case we fall down. And I put Cardiel in every single team I have. But if you have these 4 other champions, you could certainly put somebody like Apothecary in this role, or Deacon Armstrong, or another good support who gives you a little bit of extra utility out of your team. All right, that is it for me. Good luck if you use this method. It should work for you. Remember, it doesn't matter which champions you pick or even the quality of your gear, as much as it matters that the composition works well together and the stats on the champions make sense for their jobs in the team composition. Okay, you don't need God tier gear to get this done, and you don't need God tier champions either. As I just showed you, you can get it done with 3 rares, including a starter champion and a couple of chosen epics. If you don't have Allure, consider other turn meter control options. There are some rare ones out there. There are some other epic ones out there. There's even Vizix like I use here, but you've got Armiger. That's also another option. He's very good here. So if you don't have Allure, don't think that you can't get it done. You just have to maybe throw in a second champion that's going to help you with that turn meter control. And again, your Coldheart is always there for the big Heartseeker turn meter control as well. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out. Please drop a like to this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join our Discord, the link for that should be in the description of this video below. Thanks so much. I've been Colred. I will see you in another video soon.